Welcome to What If from Koala Channel. We cut through the noise, get you straight to the essential insights. And today, well, we're diving into something dramatic that unfolded just this morning, July 30th, 2025. A really powerful earthquake struck the Pacific region, followed by a tsunami. And it's got us all thinking, what if the Earth trembles again? Great. So our mission today is to unpack the immediate impact, look at the bigger picture, the Pacific Ring of Fire, and then really dig into what science says about, future events, maybe even bigger ones.
Exactly. And to do that, we've gathered quite a range of sources for this deep dive. We're looking at the breaking news, obviously, from places like AP News, CBS, Al Jazeera, Times of India, Fox Weather, but also pulling in scientific papers, government reports, even what people are saying on social media, trying to get the crucial stuff from all of it.
Okay, so let's start with this morning. The big one was the 8.8 magnitude quake off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. What were those first reports like? Did they know right away how big this was?
It sort of unfolded. Initially, reports we saw from Japan and U.S. seismologists picked up by AP and CBS, they were saying 8.0 magnitude. But pretty quickly, the U.S. Geological Survey, the USGS, they updated that, and it was a big jump, up to 8.8.
8.8, wow. That puts it in perspective.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's now ranked among the top 4 strongest quakes this century, and among the 8 strongest recorded since 1900. And the eyewitness accounts, like from Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, which is Kamchatka's regional capital, they paint quite a picture. People running into the streets, furniture toppling, mirrors breaking, cars were swaying, balconies shaking.
Scary stuff.
Definitely. A local kindergarten was damaged. Luckily, it wasn't open, apparently under repair. And there was this incredible footage, actually, released by Russian media. Doctors in a cancer clinic mid-surgery, holding onto the patient, steadying equipment as the room shook, and then just carrying on afterward. Remarkable.
Wow. That just shows incredible resilience, doesn't it? So, with a quake that big, the next thought is always the ocean. Tsunami. How fast did those warnings go out? What was the impact like across the Pacific?
Yeah, the warnings went out very fast. And the impact was felt really right across the Pacific Basin. In Russia, near the quake's origin, the Kuril Islands, specifically Severokursk, that town got hit by waves topping 3 meters, so about 10 feet. Fishing boats washed away. It's interesting, that town was actually destroyed by a tsunami back in 1952, and they rebuilt it on higher ground. So this time, mainly the port was exposed.
Ah, okay. A lesson learned there, it seems. What about Japan?
Japan felt it too, though slightly, according to NHK television. Tsunami alerts went out immediately. They issued evacuation advisories for, I think, over 900,000 residents. Huge area, 133 municipalities from Hokkaido down to Okinawa. The initial waves detected were relatively small, like 60 centimeters, about 2 feet. In places like Hokkaido and Iwate, Tokyo Bay saw maybe 20 centimeters. But the key thing is no injuries or damage reported by their Fire and Disaster Management Agency, which is good news. And as precaution, nuclear plants stopped work, including Fukushima Daiichi.
Right. Always a major concern after 2011. And across the ocean, Hawaii.
Hawaii was on high alert. They issued a tsunami warning, though the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center later downgraded it to an advisory. That a major tsunami wasn't expected. Still, Midway Atoll measured waves, peak to trough, around 6 feet according to the governor. In Honolulu, the sirens went off. People were advised to get to higher ground. Roads got pretty crowded with traffic evacuating. But crucially, flights eventually restarted, harbors reopened, and most importantly, no deaths reported from the tsunami in Hawaii.
That's a huge relief. What about the U.S. West Coast? California, Oregon.
They were under tsunami advisories too.
Yeah.
California, Oregon, Washington. Waves were forecast to be smaller there, maybe 1 to 2 feet for Oregon, less for places like Monterey Bay, San Francisco Bay. San Diego put out advisories. Officials were urging people, stay out of the water, stay off beaches and harbors. Crescent City up in Northern California, they actually activated their tsunami sirens. They were under a warning for a bit. And authorities like the National Weather Service in the Bay Area were warning people not to go to the coast to take pictures, emphasizing it's not just one wave.
Good point. California's Governor Newsom, LA Mayor Bass, they put out statements too, right? Urging caution.
Yes. Urging vigilance, follow instructions. Standard but necessary messages in that situation. Canada also expected small waves, less than a foot for Vancouver Island, but advised local governments to think about evacuating marinas, beaches. New Zealand warned about strong currents, unpredictable surges, told people stay out of the water. Didn't go as far as evacuation warnings, though. And even China had issued a warning for Shanghai and Zhejiang province, but later lifted it.
It really paints a picture of how connected the Pacific is. One event sends ripples, literally, across thousands of miles. But this event, as big as it was, it's part of a much larger pattern, right? This isn't random.
Not at all. It's deeply connected to the geology of the region. This earthquake happened right in the heart of what we call the Pacific Ring of Fire.
The Ring of Fire. We hear that term a lot. Can you break that down for us? What exactly is it?
Sure. Imagine a giant horseshoe shape drawn around the edge of the Pacific Ocean. That's basically the Ring of Fire. And it's, well, fiery. It's where most of the world's earthquakes and volcanic eruptions happen. The reason is plate tectonics. You've got these massive plates making up the Earth's crust, and around the Pacific, oceanic plates are being forced underneath other plates. It's called subduction.
Subduction, okay.
Yeah. And this process, this grinding and scraping of huge plates, it generates enormous stress. When that stress releases, you get earthquakes. The biggest earthquakes on the planet happen in these subduction zones. Statistically, something like over 80% of quakes magnitude 8.0 or higher happen in the Ring of Fire. And it's not just quakes. About 2/3 of the world's volcanic eruptions since 1960 have also occurred there.
So this 8.8 quake off Kamchatka fits right into that picture.
Perfectly. It occurred right along the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. That's a specific subduction zone where the massive Pacific plate is diving underneath a smaller plate called the Okhotsk microplate. That microplate is sort of caught between the Pacific plate and the larger North America plate. It's a really active boundary. And Kamchatka Peninsula itself, one of the most volcanically active spots on Earth. About 20 historically active volcanoes there, all fed by this subduction process. And this trench connects to others, like the Japan Trench to the south, the Aleutian Trench to the north. It's all part of this vast, interconnected system.
It really is fascinating and terrifying, which leads to the next big question we'll always ask after something like this. Can we predict these? I remember hearing some buzz, some rumors, even before this morning's quake, about predictions for a major disaster in Japan around early July. What's the science say about that kind of thing?
Right. That's always the hope, isn't it? Prediction. And yes, there was definitely talk leading up to July 5th this year. It seemed to be fueled by a manga comic prediction and maybe a psychic claim, predicting a huge tsunami for Japan. But from a scientific standpoint, predicting earthquakes with any kind of specific time, location, and magnitude, it's currently considered impossible. You know, Carl Sagan's famous line, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, the evidence behind those July 5th predictions was, let's just say, flimsy, and as we know, nothing major materialized on July 5th. A traveler quoted in one report basically said, no one can predict earthquakes, and people in Japan weren't overly worried about those specific rumors.
Okay, so pinpoint prediction is out. But scientists do talk about risk and probability, right? I've heard the term seismic gaps. What's that about? Is it like, if an area hasn't had a big quake in a while, it's due?
That's the basic idea behind the seismic gap hypothesis, yeah. It suggests that the longer a fault segment is gone without a major rupture, the higher the hazard becomes, because stress is presumably building up. And there have been cases where it seemed to work. For example, the central Kuril segment, part of the same trench system we're talking about. After the huge 2004 Indian Ocean quake, scientists identified that segment as potential gap. And sure enough, in 2006 and 2007, you had M8.3 and M8.2 quakes there.
So sometimes it holds up.
Sometimes.
Okay.
But it's also been criticized. It's not a foolproof method. Some seismologists argue the opposite, that recent activity might actually signal increased hazard in the near future, not decreased. So it's a tool, a concept scientists use to assess risk, but it's definitely not a crystal ball. The system is incredibly complex.
Okay, so if we can't perfectly predict when, maybe we can focus on what might happen based on the past. What lessons have we learned from historical tsunamis in this region that help us prepare?
Absolutely. History is crucial here. We mentioned the 1952 Kamchatka earthquake earlier, magnitude 9.0. Besides the damage in Kamchatka, it sent huge waves, 9 meters, 30 feet all the way to Hawaii, and it leveled several Kurils, leading them to rebuild higher up. A hard lesson learned.
And then, of course, the event that's still fresh in many minds, 2011 in Japan.
Yes, the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami, or Tohoku. Magnitude 9.0, Japan's strongest ever, fourth strongest globally since 1900. The tsunami was devastating, led to the Fukushima nuclear disaster, and it taught us some really tough lessons about warnings. The Japan Meteorological Agency, the JMA, initially underestimated both the quake's magnitude, they first said 7.9 when it was really 9.0, and the potential tsunami height. They predicted maybe 3 6-meter waves in some areas, where waves ended up being over 10 meters.
And that had tragic consequences.
It did. Some people felt safe behind existing 10-meter seawalls, heard the 3-meter prediction, and maybe didn't evacuate when they should have. Plus, power outages, communication lines down, it made getting warnings out even harder. It also showed the limits of hazard maps. They're useful tools, absolutely, but they can't predict everything. And sometimes they can create a false sense of security if you live just outside the predicted danger zone.
Right. And what about physical defenses, like seawalls?
Another key lesson. Even really robust seawalls and dikes can be overtopped by an unexpectedly large tsunami. Analysis after 2011 showed that once water started flowing over the walls, the lack of protection at the base, the toe of the structure, became a critical weak point, leading to faster collapse. The takeaway really is that you can't rely solely on engineered structures. You need multiple layers of defense.
But wasn't there also a story of success from 2011? Something about students evacuating?
Yes. The miracle of Kamaishi. It's a fantastic example of how education and preparedness can save lives, even when technology or structures fail. Junior high students in Kamaishi had been taught disaster preparedness by Professor Toshitaka Katada. Key principles like don't blindly trust hazard maps, always do your best to survive, and take the initiative to evacuate yourself and help others. So when the quake hit, they immediately ran for higher ground, and crucially, their actions prompted other residents, even younger elementary school kids, to follow them. They saved hundreds, maybe thousands of lives through their training and quick thinking.
That's incredibly powerful. Human agency as the ultimate defense.
It really is, and technology has improved too, of course. NOAA's lab, PMEL, developed the DART buoys Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunamis. These buoys sit out in the deep ocean and can detect a passing tsunami wave and transmit that data in real time via satellite to warning centers. The U.S. Tsunami Warning and Education Act in 2006 helped push this forward. And this system proved its worth during the 2011 Japan tsunami. It allowed warning centers to provide a pretty accurate 6-hour forecast for flooding in Hawaii, which helped prevent fatalities there.
So the buoys give real-time data.
Exactly. And that data feeds into sophisticated computer models, initially developed in Russia, refined in the US. They can simulate the tsunami's path and height. They're getting better all the time, but accuracy still depends on things like how well we know the shape of the ocean floor and the bathymetry and the exact details of the earthquake fault rupture. And they don't usually account for secondary waves from aftershocks. Still, a huge leap forward.
Okay, so we've learned prediction is tough, but warnings are better, defenses need layers, and education is key. Looking forward then, what does this mean for people living along the Ring of Fire? If we can't know exactly when the next big one hits, what's the focus for building resilience?
That really is the million-dollar question. While we can't predict the timing, science can give us estimates about the potential size of future events. There are statistical models, like something called the truncated Gutenberg-Richter law, which scientists use to estimate probabilities and maximum possible magnitudes for a given fault zone. For this Japan-Kuril-Kamchatka trench system, these models suggest earthquakes potentially up to magnitude 10 are physically possible. Maybe even 11 based on another formula, though that might be stretching it.
Right, magnitude 10. Or 11, that's almost unimaginable.
It is. The point is, the massive 2011 Tohoku quake, M9.2, while devastating, might not have been the absolute largest earthquake that region is capable of producing over geological time. Now, the estimated recurrence interval for something like a magnitude 10 event there is very long, maybe around 4,000 years, based on that GR law. So it's not an immediate forecast, but it informs long-term planning.
And research continues, obviously.
Constantly. Scientists view the Ring of Fire as this incredible natural laboratory. They're studying how stress builds and releases, trying to understand the differences between the frequent small quakes and the rare giants. They're also studying the volcanoes, trying to understand magma systems and predict eruptions better. It's ongoing, vital work.
So for communities, what does that practical future resilience look like?
It looks like holistic planning, taking multiple approaches. Sendai City in Japan, after 2011, is a good example. Their reconstruction plan involves multiple coastal protection. It's not just seawalls. It's integrating seawalls with coastal forests, building artificial hills for evacuation, elevating roads to serve as evacuation routes and barriers. The goal is to slow the water down, reduce the depth, minimize losses, and crucially, integrating all of that with really effective evacuation plans and public education. It's about layers.
Layers of defense and layers of knowledge, it sounds like, making sure people understand the risks and know what to do.
Exactly. Knowledge isn't much use if it just sits in a report. It needs to be understood and applied by the people actually facing the risk. And we need critical thinking, too. Sifting through information, avoiding rumors, trusting reliable sources. The overall goal, internationally, is moving towards what's called tsunami-ready communities. It's a standard promoted by the IOC, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. The aim is for all communities globally that are threatened by tsunamis to meet these readiness standards by 2030. It's all about preparedness.
Preparedness, not prediction. That seems to be the key takeaway. So while we can't know the exact moment the next big one might strike, we can arm ourselves with knowledge. We can keep improving our warning systems, building smarter, and making sure communities are genuinely prepared based on everything we've learned, often the hard way. It's about being informed, being ready, and not letting fear paralyze us. So thinking about everything we've discussed today, what really stands out to you, listening in? How do you think communities living with the immense power of the Ring of Fire can best balance that reality with preparing for its unpredictable nature? Something to think about.